Hello, folks, and welcome to Got Your Back, NHL edition, LeBrun and Rishaug, brought to you by Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals. Got a fantastic podcast on the way today. Dallas Stars superstar forward Jason Robertson in conversation with Pierre LeBrun and I. Did you know that he is a big analytics guy? Talked in depth about some of his own analytics and some things that he's looking for and was looking for improvement this year in his game. Real interesting conversation with a very interesting, very high-end player in the National Hockey League. Got Your Backs, brought to you by Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals, providing equipment and supplies to all facets of the Canadian construction industry. But what really sets them apart is their get-her-done attitude. It's a core value of the company. I have been there. They have it proudly displayed on the walls. Every one of the staff members lives by that get-her-done formula to ensure they never let the customer down. Cross Country Canada takes great pride in this attitude, and they truly believe that their customer success is their success. As we check in with the fellas, Pierre LeBrun and MJ, Mike Johnson. Johnny, another day, another podcast, another background, another different wallpaper behind you. What city, what hotel, where the heck are you, pal?
Clearly a hotel. Like, they all kind of look the same. I'm in Montreal right now. I've been in Montreal for the last couple of days. Saw them beat your Oilers, Shoggy, quite handily on Super Bowl Sunday, and they're playing in a bit of a turtle derby against Chicago on Tuesday night here. So, yeah, I'm in Montreal, which I haven't been in Montreal for a while. I quite like this city. I like being around here. So, although, you know what? I'm at that age. I went and played tennis yesterday, and I haven't played tennis as much as I want to. And I'm so sore. I wasn't even playing that hard, but I'm at that age where I need to get over the hump where I am no longer sore after playing tennis.
How many sets? How many sets did you play?
It was like 45 minutes of a pretty
That's a
intensive
good haul.
hit. Yeah, it was relatively intense. So I'm like
indoor tennis, I hope.
Indoor, beautiful clay, little private club. It was really, really nice. It was lovely. But yeah,
by the way, what time do we think the Oilers got into Montreal Saturday from Ottawa, from the afternoon game in Ottawa? Never mind.
Why do you ask, Pierre? What are you saying, Pierre? Goodness sakes. They're professionals.
I don't know if that team looked ready on Sunday.
And the thing was, Pierre, they were staying over after the game. They were staying to watch the Super Bowl. It was the last game of a road trip, so they got the carrot. Listen, guys, let's play Montreal, let's win the game, and then we'll hang out. We'll have, not a party, but, watch the Super Bowl together as a team, and then we'll fly home the next day. So they kind of dropped the ball with that one.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. And the thing about those road trips, Johnny, this, when you're flying home from a road trip, you're not really thinking about what your last result was. You're thinking about how'd we do on the trip overall. And there was a 4-game road trip, and they went in there against the Montreal Canadiens, who they should be able to beat, with the chance to get on that plane and fly home feeling really good about a road trip in which, quite frankly, their play wasn't great. And they just laid an absolute egg. A more mature team goes in and grabs that game by the throat, realizing the value of that win to the road trip, to the party after the game, to all of those things.
So yes and no. Yes, you'd like to have them be a little more prepared, put up a better effort. But no, is Tampa a mature team? I've seen Tampa drop the ball against bad teams. I've seen them lose.
Yep.
The best teams in the league other than Boston, lose to teams and lose to teams at the bottom of the standings. The Maple Leafs do it all the time. Tampa's done it all the time. The thing about that one was weird, though, is that they could have been maybe in first place had they won that game if Vegas would have not gotten the result. So, yeah, it was surprising, sure. But the idea that because you're a top team and the Oilers are, and you're playing a bottom team and the Canadians are, you should win every time. Montreal is going to win 4 out of every 10 games the rest of the way. So they're beating someone, including teams at the top of the standing. So it's not a shock that they lost, maybe a shock of how they played while losing.
This is why I don't know why people gamble on hockey, by the way, but the March games in particular are ridiculous because I'm telling you, the teams at the bottom of the standings win so many games in the stretch run where there's no pressure on them, and you got tired, stressed out teams trying to make the playoffs, and I don't know, it's chaos in the parody NHL.
While we're talking about the Edmonton Oilers, let's just dive right into the topic du jour. And a big topic du jour is going to be trades. So let's start there. CJ reported over the weekend that maybe Oilers and Sharks have re-engaged on a potential Erik Karlsson trade. We've got Chychrun sitting out games because potentially there's a trade there. I don't believe it's with the Edmonton Oilers, but Chychrun has been connected to Edmonton at times. They clearly need a blue liner. Let's start with the headline, though. MJ, when you hear Edmonton Oilers, Erik Karlsson, potential trade, what pops into the mind of Mystic Mike?
Excitement at what that would look like on the ice. Erik Karlsson is having an incredible year. You add his puck moving and puck transporting skills to a team that already can do that as well as anyone with some high-end guys, and you think about what could be. So on the ice, you think, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I would want him. Everyone should want him on their team. But I thought we just talked to Ken Holland. I thought he just said dollar in, dollar out. I'm pretty sure Karlsson makes 11.5 for like the next 4 years. How is this possibly going to work? Like, even if you send Jesse Puljujarvi, Tyson Barrie, what is that, $7.5 million? And maybe if the Sharks eat 4 or 5, they kind of dollar for dollar, and then you'd start dumping in the picks and the Borgos and the other prospects that have to go along with the salary equivalent. I get why you want it. I didn't know the Oilers would be able to take that on, not just this year, but for all those other years going forward, because at some point, they're going to have to re-sign Leon as well coming up. Like, they're already extraordinarily top heavy. Adding another $11.5 million player makes them, very even heavier at the top, Pierre. I see why, but I just also wonder if it's feasible and smart to do it.
Yeah, this is one of those things where the hockey side and the cap side are counterintuitive here in this storyline. And I was thinking the other day, and I should have done the research for this before this, but I forgot. Has a Norris Trophy winner ever been traded in season? I don't think so. I mean, Erik Karlsson could win the Norris Trophy this year, obviously.
Yeah. And be a candidate for the Hart.
So wouldn't that be something? I listen. I mean, can you imagine the Oilers' power play, which is already the best in the NHL, with Erik Karlsson at quarterback? I mean, that's like we're bringing back Coffee, Curry, and Gretzky here. But the financial part of it, and maybe it's just that I wasn't very good at math. It just stuns me. I can't get my mind around how this deal could work. I get it. I've seen I actually do. But what I'm saying is it just seems like so much effort as to how this deal would work. Now, a little intel that I want to throw in here, because there were reports over the weekend that, the Sharks have a max that they can retain on Carlson, and that is really the big problem, not just for Edmonton, for any other team trying to trade for Carlson, is that the Sharks aren't willing to eat enough in a Carlson deal. What I was told on Monday by a Sharks source is that is not true, that the Sharks have not told anyone, here's how far we're willing to go. It really depends on how the deal develops, right? I mean, the more you go, the more you get back. I mean, it's sort of all intertwined that way. So I thought it was important to point that out.
Well, they do have a max, the max being 50%.
Yeah. Sorry, but what I'm saying is,
I understand
over the weekends,
they're already retaining on Burns, and if to do a deal with Edmonton, it's got to be 40%. Like, they need to take
$5 million, right?
Yeah,
$4 to $5 million.
So now for 4 more years, like, I understand total teardowns and rebuilds, and I understand that, but sometimes it kind of happens faster than you think, and maybe in 2 years you're surprised at where you're at. And now you've hamstrung yourself. So for an organization that's trying to pull a 180 here, I don't know, 4 years at $4.5 million retention, like that feels like a big ask, even for a team that's tearing it down the way the Sharks are, Johnny.
It is a big ask, and that's the problem. And that is the inherent difficulty in this deal. It's not Erik Karlsson. It's not even the salary. It's the term. It's the fact that he has so much left. It's the problem for the acquiring team. It's acquiring for the eating team. If that's San Jose, you don't want to have $7, $8, $9 million of retained salary on your books going forward for 3-4 years, because that does hurt you. So I don't know, Pierre. If it's ever going to get done, it's going to get. We've talked about this. It should get done this year. If you're going to go for it, you got to go and try to do it this year. I could see, if you eat the 4 or 5, you get down to $7 million. You can make the salaries match up by, I just said Tyson Barrie and Jesse Puljujarvi. That's $7 million. And then you have to add in all the other players for the value of the retained salary plus the value of Erik Karlsson, which is a lot. But just going forward, it still makes it hard for the Oilers to kind of round out the rest of their team. So I don't know, Pierre. It's funny. It's fun to think about. What do you think the likelihood of it actually happening this year?
Yeah, let's put a percentage on it.
Yeah, I think it's 10 to 20% that it happens before March 3rd. I think it's a lot more likely still this summer where there's more flexibility and teams can live over the cap for a few months and figure out the rest. I just, and I'm not saying for Edmonton, I'm saying San Jose in general, being able to complete a Carlson deal. And we had Eric on our podcast, and I think some of the telling comments in that interview were that winning would trump almost everything in his decision. Remember, he has the full no move. And to be honest, we still don't know whether he would waive to go to Edmonton. I've tried to find that out. I don't know the answer to that question. But don't forget that whole part of it too, which actually really seemed to be forgotten all weekend with all this, that Erik Karlsson has the ultimate say. To me, I think it's a solid deal, if at all, but we'll see. The thing for the Sharks to me is this too. Is there a chance that Erik Karlsson is this great again next year? Sure there is. But he may not be, based on the last couple of years as well. And so you get why, if you're San Jose, the summer's maybe a better time. But boy, in the moment right now, he is sizzling. He may never again.
You got to strike.
Strike while the iron is hot. You have
to. You got to strike.
And like, respect, if he even is this good again, what does it help San Jose? Like, they're not going to be good, right? So, like, he's having a historically good year, and they are nowhere near the playoffs. And I don't think, as good as he's been, they're not piling into the Shark Tank to watch Erik Karlsson play. Like, I think it's just his greatness is not matching up with what they are as an organization. And I think that's why I would swing now. If you can get anything remotely like what is being bandied about, even if you have to eat 4 or 5, I would be inclined to try to pull it off now.
And by the way, this is a very complicated deal if it happens at all. And the deal that actually is going to happen for sure. Well, I shouldn't say for sure because he's not a UFA, but the deal that clearly probably needs more attention from Mike Greer is Timo Meier, who, in my opinion, will be the most impactful player traded at this year's trade deadline. And so it's just interesting if you were in that San Jose Sharks war room right now and navigating all these phone calls. There's a lot going on. Also
flushing out like $20 million in players in like a span of a week. Like, I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. Like, you're talking about a quarter of the cap will be gone in 2 days in 2 players.
Yeah. Makes payroll every 2 weeks easier for whoever's got that job.
I guess so.
No more of those crazy checks running through. Just quickly, last on the Edmonton Oilers. What about this logic, Johnny? Because, both of you, for the Oilers to add Erik Karlsson, they got to subtract Tyson Barrie. So the asset cost, and it sounds like it's like multiple first-round caliber assets, 2, 3 maybe, good prospect, that sort of thing. So if you're the Edmonton Oilers and you add Erik Karlsson, in order to add Erik Karlsson, you got to subtract Tyson Barrie. Now, Barrie runs the best power play in the league and has for the last number of years. Barrie is underrated in terms of how well he's playing for the Oilers overall. I'm not comparing him to Erik Karlsson and saying that he's in that hemisphere. What I'm saying is if the Oilers give up 3 first-round caliber assets, they're not adding Erik Karlsson. They're adding the difference between Erik Karlsson and Tyson Barrie because you're subtracting a pretty darn good player too. So is it worth that asset cost to swap those guys out for the amount that you improve?
Yeah, so I think the delta between Barrie and Carlson at 5-on-5 is massive. Massive. I understand that Tyson Barrie's not having a bad year, but it's massive. I don't think the delta on the power play is that significant. And so you're weighing those 2 different things. Like, I don't expect as tremendous as the talent would be, like, is the power play going to be 40%? It's already the second best power play in the last 45 years. Only like the 72 Islanders.
You want to mess with it?
Well, not just mess with it. Like, how better can it be? A percentage point or 2? You're not going to go from 20 to 35. You might go from 32 to 33. So that's not going to help you. Where Karlsson will be different than Barrie is not in the power play. 5-on-5, Pierre.
He's got more points than McDavid at even strength.
That difference is massive between Karlsson and every other play-driving guy, Pierre.
Yeah. Transition game, I mean, few people did better than Erik Karlsson. I should also, the other thing is, I think there have been reports that maybe the ask is 3 first-round picks. Mike Greer came out publicly and denied that to Corey Masisak of The Athletic. So that is not accurate, I guess.
But what if it's like, when he says 3 first-round, it's like, so maybe it's Evan Bouchard, who was a first-rounder, whether it's David Bourgault, who was
and
a
I'm
first-rounder.
talking about in a 40%
recent first-round pick.
And in a 40% retention scenario, Pierre. You're telling me that if they retain 40%,
yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like the ask will change based, and the Oilers need to ask them to retain a pile. So you'd think it would be at least 2, if not more.
And that's part of what Ken Holland has talked about, not just with us last week, but in other interviews recently, is that whatever they do, they're probably going to have to get a current roster player going out. And so how much does this trade augment who they are right now? And that's a tough conversation. You're not just, some teams, like you look at Carolina, lost Max Pacioretty. Carolina gets to just add. They don't have to take anything away other than someone moves down the lineup. If they trade for Timo Meier or whatever, everything is going to have to materially affect their roster if they do something tangible with the trade deadline, which is part of the conversation.
Johnny, you get bonus points for this segment for your wicked intelligent use of the word Delta. That was tight. Honestly, I'm sitting here trying to describe it, and if you're watching the pod, you could see me doing this like with my hands and trying to illustrate this, and you're like, yeah, man, that's the delta between them. Can you translate that quick? Like the difference between two?
That's it. He just translated it for me.
The difference between
it's my finance degree term.
I love having a finance guy on the pod when we're talking
Bowling
cap.
Green, baby. Yeah. There we go.
Okay, you touched on Timo Meier. Lots of different teams potentially attached. The Winnipeg Jets pop up all of a sudden in that conversation with Kevin Cheveldayoff doing a little bit of scouting here and there. Johnny, what's your gut, man? Like, who is most likely to go out and grab this guy?
I think Carolina makes sense because Carolina also likes to acquire players that they not strictly rentals, and Meier might not be able to do that. They have the easiest way to fit him because his salary is actually less than the guy they've lost for the year, so they can just, other than the assets having to give up to get him, they don't have to do any cap gymnastics to get him in under this year. So I think they make the most sense. And then I think about the other teams that are very motivated. I won't quite say desperate yet, but I think can Toronto find a way to just kind of give that a whirl? Does Winnipeg find a way to give that a whirl? Teams like that. Does Vegas look at him now they don't have Mark Stone for the rest of the year? Those kind of teams that may be financially a little more complex, but the desperation level is super high. I think those kind of teams, Pierre, because he's the guy. He's the piece you trade a ton for because he's the finishing piece. He's not getting you to the playoffs. He's helping you go deep, potentially all the way in the playoffs because that's how good he is. That's how much he's going to cost. So I look at the teams that have a chance to do that when I think about who might acquire Meier.
Man, and you just love his game too. He plays a hard game. I mean, he's the complete package. I think New Jersey's super motivated. I mentioned them a ton of times over the past couple of weeks, but my understanding is there have been more talks in the last 48 hours between the Devils and Sharks. And so I think Tom Fitzgerald's pretty motivated to try and find a fit there for the Devils. But that deal would hinge not only on finding the final package, which I think has to include 3 assets, but also I don't know that the Devils would be comfortable trading for Timo Meier unless he's signed to an extension. And my understanding as we tape this is that the agent Claude Lemieux still has not been given permission to speak directly to teams, which is fine. I think what Mike Greer is probably doing is I'm bringing all these trade talks close to the finish line with a couple of teams, and I know what's on the table, and then maybe I bring in the agent. I also, I can't name the team at this point, but I can tell you that I spoke to a team in the last 24 hours that said, hey, we'll trade for him without signing him, by the way. We'll worry about that later. And if they rent him out, they rent him out. So it's not so some teams are coming at this a little differently. The one thing about the Leafs is that I love it from a Leafs fit perspective. I mean, what's not to like? I don't understand it from the Sharks perspective because the Sharks are looking around at the kind of prospects they're looking for or the kind of assets they want. I don't know how the Leafs match up with, for example, New Jersey or Carolina.
First round pick, Matthew Nyes, Rasmus Sandin.
Well, but I mean, hasn't Kyle Dubas come out and said he's not trading Matthew Nyes? I mean,
so if Connor McDavid's available, Matthew Nyes off the table. Like at some point, like I know he's a top prospect, but what are we talking about here? I get it.
It seemed pretty definite the way
I know, Pierre, but like heaven forbid the GM gives you some misdirection in one of his pressers that he's kind of going a different direction. And
I know.
Like, and when I say this is not
it's
to
not been
disrespect Matthew Nyes.
Though.
It's
has backed up what he said though over the years.
Sure, but like it's a compliment to Matthew Nyes that we're having this kind of conversation that they think that he's that good. So it's not about me saying that he's not going to be a good NHL player, but let's be honest. He's a college player. He's got 45 points in 30 games. Really good prospect. Like you're a team that's trying to win a Stanley Cup, whether it's for somebody else within Matthew Nyes like prospect. Like, isn't it worth it to take a what if he becomes this and go get a guy who we know is already that? Like I the hesitation, I get it, long term, backfilling entry level contracts. I just think like sometimes you got to trade the young guys, going with a known commodity.
And certainly when it comes to the least first round pick, I would, if I were Kyle Dubas, I could care less about the asset. Yeah. I don't mean care less like it has no value. I mean that player won't be a lead for 5 years. Like, come on. I mean, if you can get something tangible with that first round pick, I mean, and you can't. I get it. Like I think I give Kyle Dubas a lot of credit because it just seems like he's been able to push out all the noise about him being on an expiring deal, on the Leafs not winning a first round series in forever. I think he's doing a good job of saying, I'm not letting those things affect my conversations with teams at the deadline. It's commendable.
The same way he asks players to do it every time they're in the last year of their contract. Commendable, Mike. What are you talking about, Pierre? He's sitting in a press box. Who cares if he doesn't have a contract?
I know, but that's what I'm saying. The point I'm about to get to is this. I think it should matter. I think those factors actually should affect this deadline.
I don't. He doesn't have a contract.
I don't think they should. No, the fact that this team has to finally win.
Oh yeah, of course that matters.
And I think I understand like a lot of, especially in the analytics community. Well, there's so much randomness in the playoffs for sure. That's the salary cap. I mean, there's parity, but you know what? Colorado goes out and gets Arturi Lehkonen, which wasn't exactly a trade where people spoke hours about on leading into trade deadline day last year. He scores the series clinching goal in the Western Final and the series clinching goal in the Stanley Cup Final. You can absolutely impact your team in a way that gives you that little nudge over the top. And I don't know, if I were the Leafs, it would absolutely be the all-in year, which I think is something that the Leafs disagree with, that philosophy.
That guy's name's Ivan Barbashev. That's this year's Lehkonen for Toronto. Like, not the sexiest
I love
guy,
him,
but a guy who's
You've mentioned him a few times, Johnny. You've mentioned him a few times as a possibility. Hey, you like that one?
I wrote his name this week in my Leafs Athletic piece. I like Barbashev and Jake McCabe as medium ads for the Leafs at each position. Not the big sexy headliners, but
And by the way, Jake McCabe is that player that has the 7-team no trade list, and so all 7 Canadian teams raise their eyebrow and go, "Huh?" I think the Oilers would have huge interest in Jake McCabe. I don't know that Jake McCabe is doing that, but I think he would be a guy that the Oilers would absolutely target. But it sounds like maybe Toronto would be the Canadian option if there is a Canadian option for Jake McCabe.
It's amazing too, though. Like, respectfully, Chicago's a great city. Chicago's a mess on the ice, and they're going to be for a few years, right? So, like, while you may think, well, do I want to go live in Toronto or in Edmonton or whatever? Like as much as it's great to live in Chicago, if your team's crap and they're going to be for a bit, the Magnificent Mile is great and all, but like it's not fun to be in Chicago if you don't win. So
when Jake McCabe arrived in Chicago, he talked about how, it was his plan. His plan was to get to Chicago. That's where his family wanted to be. He hoped to be able to play there, and he got there. But I think he's a competitor, and there's frustration at where things are at. So sounds like he's willing to go. It's just, I don't know if a trip to Edmonton is necessary, because I think we would be hearing tons about the Oilers on Jake McCabe if he was willing to come to Edmonton.
And the other thing is, I tweeted this out over the weekend, but the asking price from the Hawks, I think some eyebrows were raised.
Price is high this year? Really? Price is high?
But, they are telling teams that it's at least a first-round pick right now. But if the Hawks make him a $2 million player instead of a $4 million player, it's a first plus. And, people are complaining about the price for Jakob Chychrun, but there you go.
They want the Brandon Hagel discount, right? He's a good player, but the contract makes him even more valuable.
Yeah. You mentioned Jake Chychrun. Let's go there. Interesting strategy here from Arizona. This, when that first comes out that they're sitting him out for trade reasons. And by the way, I thought it was really smart of them to do this, because if there wasn't a ton of action on him, it probably stirred some up. But you get the impression that this must be really close. I mean, who sits a player out for trade reasons unless the player is imminently about to be traded? So whether something was close and then fell through, whether it is actually close or not, Pierre, what's your information on kind of where this thing sits and why they're doing? And Johnny, I guess, what do we think about the fact that they're doing this? Go ahead, Pierre.
Well, I think the first thing that's interesting is that when he was scratched on Saturday, that the teams that I think have been trying on him and that I think remain in the mix were caught off guard. Which suggests that if this trade was close with the team, it wasn't with the teams that I was talking to who would like to get him.
Right.
If that makes any sense. So I don't know that something was close. I think that they're just playing. I think they're just being smart with the asset here. A player who has come back from a number of injuries and has had a great year, but hey, what a nightmare if he goes out and blocks a shot in a meaningless game for the Arizona Coyotes. So I think that's what this is more about. And now it's about obviously manufacturing that trade between now and March 3rd. This is a delicate area. As long as the player, by the way, is fine with all this and sounds like he is, then it's no big deal. But, remember when Taylor Hall a couple of years ago when he was with the Devils and sat out a couple of games with in December while the Devils were working on a trade. And this is an area where NHLPA sometimes will poke their nose in it because it's like, well, how long are you sitting this guy out? Mm-hmm. Like what's happening here? But in this case, I think everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. And you're right, Froggy. Like, no better way to ramp up a return call. Like, if any team was circling thinking we have a couple more weeks to get our best offer in there, you maybe think, I got a couple hours to get my best offer in there. So let's put it on the table and see if it's good enough. I'm curious, too, because you say that Chychrun is okay with this. And it makes sense that he would be because he's been wanting out of there for a long time.
Yeah.
Because I remember a deadline player being sat out 3 weeks in advance. It's kind of like the last 3, 4, 5 days, but not the last weeks. And I think some players like Taylor Hall would have a problem with that. And I don't know. I mean, listen, you don't have to play players. That's the rules of the CBA. But I'm not sure if sitting guys out for trade reasons, I could see the PA wanting to kind of like, hang on. I don't know if we're entirely okay with like 1 month, 2 months, 3. Like, how long can you do this for if it's just for reasons? But Chychrun wants out. And it's worth noting, he's had a fantastic year. Like, not just excellent year on a bad team. And you think about what he could do on a better team with more support around him. That's why acquiring teams would have him at $4.5 million for a couple more years is an absolute steal for how good he is. But yeah, I mean, it was so widely reported that it was LA to the point where LA apparently had to go call their top prospects and say, Brant Clark, you're not getting traded. Like, it's not you, which tells you how strangely public this became when it wasn't consummated shortly after. So in that sense, it's been a little bit untidy.
Yeah, I put the Kings in a tough spot because they still want the player, but they sort of had to respond over the weekend and say, we're not close to dealing for him. Mm-hmm. And I think my sense is they were a bit confused about what was going on because they clearly were not told that they were out either because I think the Kings still want him. But what's been interesting in that whole thing, I can't imagine there's a team that's called Arizona more than LA over the past year and a half.
So, Pierre,
it's always been the natural fit. They need a top 4 on the left side. They're loaded on the right side. But there's a very simple reason why it hasn't happened to this point is that the Kings have said that price is too much for them. And so here we go, the poker game.
Do you think that Chychrun was getting sat out for a specific team or just for protection? And if it was a specific team, was it not LA?
Had to be a specific team.
It feels like that, but I feel that's what Pierre's here to tell me. Not so sure?
I'm not so sure.
Okay.
Interesting.
But
So then,
I'm not so sure. I'm literally not so sure.
no, you said I'm not so sure with this look on your face.
Yeah.
That's like, I might be sure, but I'm not sure. I'm sure. And I mean, no, he's checking right now.
No. And listen, it certainly makes a lot of sense. I think there are teams that may pop out because this guy's signed. Just keep an eye on this. May not necessarily have to be a playoff team. The other thing is, I reported this last week, and I can't tell to which degree they keep checking, but the Boston Bruins have been quiet.
I was just going to ask
Yeah,
about, is
yeah.
Boston going to surprise the hell out of everybody? So here they are, 1-3-1 in their last 5. And not that it's panic time in any way, shape, or form, but what do you think?
I know they've inquired. What I don't know is this just due diligence? How much do we like this player? Are they in there heavy? So that's an interesting team to keep an eye on for sure.
Can you imagine them if you go with like McAvoy and Grzelcyk and Lindholm and Chychrun? Like, what are we talking about?
What's happening?
Like, what are the good luck rolling out against that group? Man.
That'd definitely be something. All right, boys. That's a great segment. Lots of good trade chatter in there. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens here over the next couple of weeks. Johnny, you weren't part of our interview with Jason Robertson. Pierre, you and I had a great chance to chat with him yesterday. Johnny, before we get to that interview, I'll just ask you for your impressions of the year Robertson is having. He's on that 50-goal pace. And this is a guy who pays attention to his own analytics, Johnny, which he's going to talk about in this interview. He knew how many shots he had blocked last year. He knew, all sorts of different things about his own game from an analytical standpoint, which he spoke very intelligently about that stuff. That says something. He's thinking it on that level.
My kind of guy who wants information. You call it analytics. I call it information.
Right.
He wants information as to what is happening on the ice and how he can be better at it. It's amazing. First off, I give him full credit. He's established he doesn't need training camp. Yeah. Brilliant. Rest of his career, never needs training camp.
Crazy. 5 games into the year after coming back from missing training camp, he went on an 18-game heater. Like, it was ridiculous.
Never needs it. Never will have to ask for it again. So that's first off. Also, I think what makes him really unique is that he's not great at any one thing, perhaps. Like, not the biggest, not the fastest, not the strongest. Can't shoot the hardest. Except his brain, obviously, is great. And that's what allows him to manipulate. And you talk about what's interesting. So he has a very long stick relative to his height. And I think a lot more players now are paying attention to how many shots of theirs get blocked. It's a real part of, like, the best goal scorers need to find ways to get to the net. And when I watch him play, he has about, I don't know, like a 2-foot release range. He can, like, way outside and shoot it past shin pads or pull it way into his toes. And, like, that's, 2-3 feet, which is enough to sling it past most defenders. And I don't know if that's because analytics or work, but, like, I think a lot of people watch Austin Matthews, who pays a lot of attention to that. A lot of the best goal scorers in the league now say, we watch Austin, his release, his shot, the way he works on things, and they want to do similar kind of stuff. And I watch him shoot the puck. That's what stands out. Not shoots it hardest, but he has a real gift at getting it past shot blockers because he's got that wide release point range, depending on what kind of shot he wants to use. And he's an awesome player, one of the best in the league, in a really good situation with good line mates and a really good team. So yeah, I'll be listening to that one. And I like that anyone who likes information, I appreciate.
Pierre, what stood out to you? Yeah.
Well, what stood out to me is he revealed he's a Dallas Cowboys fan. So I'm a Jason Robertson fan for the rest of my life now.
Johnny makes this amazing point about the mechanics of his shots and all, and you pull out of the interview, he likes my Cowboys.
and before we started the interview with Jason Robertson, he had the same glow about him that I had, and Rishaug was all because Rishaug doesn't follow the NFL. He was so confused about why.
Is that because the Eagles lost?
Correct.
They're both happy, reveling in the Eagles' defeat.
Angry NFC East fans. Angry NFC East fans.
Oh, that's awesome.
Got it.
Great job today, guys. Thank you kindly. Our interview with Dallas Stars forward Jason Robertson is coming up on the other side of the break. Stick around here. I got your back. NHL, LeBrun, Rishaug, and MJ. We want to tell you about a truly Canadian company. Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals provides equipment and supplies to all facets of the Canadian construction industry. But what sets them apart is their get-her-done attitude. It's a core value of their company. I've been to the offices. I've seen how they proudly display that on the wall at each branch. Every one of the staff members lives by the get-her-done formula to ensure they'll never let their customers down. They'll bend over backwards to get their clientele what they need when they need it. They don't make excuses. Cross Country Canada takes great pride in this attitude, and they truly believe that the success of their customer is their success. You can't get much more Canadian than that. All right, time now for Who's Got Your Back, brought to you by Liberty Smart Security, our interview segment with Dallas Stars forward Jason Robertson. Liberty Smart Security is a company that specializes in having your back. Advanced, high-quality smart security systems for your home or your business. Liberty Smart Security uses leading-edge technology to protect the things that you value most in life. Your home is your castle. Protect it with Liberty Smart Security. So Jason Robertson is having a heck of a year, and as Mike Johnson just talked about, it started out, people weren't sure what it was going to look like, because when you miss training camp and you have to join the team mid-stride, you never know exactly what you're going to get. But Robertson came out like a house on fire and has been dynamite for the Dallas Stars. We talked to him about a number of different topics, including being born in California and raised by parents who had to go to all kinds of different lengths to keep him and his brothers on the ice. Much appreciated that Jason Robertson took some time to chat with us. Presented by Liberty Smart Security, here is the Dallas Stars forward. Born in Arcadia, California, Jason Robertson joins us now. Jason, I was doing some reading on your background, and the story that I think stuck out the most to me was this idea that your mom and dad were hauling you around in an RV in the Los Angeles heat from rink to rink to try and get you more opportunity to play and more ice times. What do you remember about sitting in the back of an RV on those LA highways in that traffic?
Well, I remember getting dressed in the RV. I know it's getting from where I was in what grade it would have been, third, fourth, fifth grade. It was probably an hour and a half to get to El Segundo or Westminster or Lakewood, wherever we're going. So my parents just figured get us an RV, and we had 3 kids, so three boys playing hockey. So we would have one kid skating 4 to 5, 5 to 6, and while one's going on the ice, the other one will just rotate, come back in the RV, and eat and do our homework and everything. So it was pretty convenient, and eventually they ended up getting cable on it and watching TV and stuff. So it was pretty cool, and it was also nice when it'd be 9:30, 10 driving back, and we'd flip the couch and lay on it, and it's a lot of work for my parents driving, but they made us feel very comfortable. You know what stands out to me about that story? You were changing in the RV. I know what hockey gear smells like, man. What does this smell like in that RV with 3 boys in hockey gear in there with you? Yeah, well, I actually don't remember it being that bad, but now that I think about it, I don't know if we aired out a gear that often when we were 10 and 9, 8 years old. So I think my mom probably did it for us. Thanks for her to that. But probably maybe some scent things, and I'm not sure. I don't remember that much, but now you think about it, it's kind of gross, kind of sweaty, but whatever. You do what you got to do.
Yeah, I got 3 kids playing hockey, and I don't try not to go to the storage room where all the 3 bags are sitting in the day. And your path is so fascinating to me, Jason. You played in the Ontario Hockey League. I'm based here in Toronto, and you played Don Mills AAA before that. And I wonder if you could talk about your decisions as a family to take that path, because obviously that actually used to be more common for American kids to come up and play Canadian Major Junior, but obviously U.S. development has grown so much over the years. You actually see it less, I find. And so what brought you up here as far as your path?
Yeah, well, when I was 14, I finished playing for Detroit Kings in Detroit area, and I kind of had an idea of where I wanted to do. I live right next to where the Plymouth Whalers used to play in Plymouth. Now the program plays there, ironically, but so I was very familiar with kind of the OHL, players coming through there, going to the games and everything. And kind of understood like what the league was about. And when I was around that age, you kind of know like what the next step is after your minor midget year, whether that would be junior in the USHL program, the US program, the CHL and everything. But kind of made that decision to go play in Toronto. We had, I knew Lindsey Hofford. He was the guy who brought me over there, played for Don Mills. And I think after that, I got drafted in the OHL and the USHL, but I ended up trying out for the Frontenacs and making the team there, and and then it just kind of took off from there. And my little brother followed those same footsteps and everything. So
Right.
it was we kind of made that decision when I was 13, 14, because I figured the OHL was, all the talent it produces and all the players that come up from the CHL, especially in that area, Toronto, Detroit, that area. It's just something that I thought, was the fastest route to get to the NHL and to get to pro hockey, which is what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do that. So I'm just completely focused 100% on hockey, and that's why I went there.
Want to get to the season that you're having now. We'll talk lots about that in a minute. Just last question on kind of the background. I was also reading a quote from your mom where, she talked about how you really only considered yourselves to be, from California, basically. But when you got onto the large stage that is the National Hockey League, the Filipino descent, that is on your mom's side is something that you started getting attention for and started getting approached by people, of various backgrounds, talking about how inspiring it is to see someone of your background playing where you're playing. What was that experience like for you? And what's your experience now in dealing with those communities? Because that's not necessarily that common a hockey background.
Yeah, well, it's obviously special. Very humbled to be a role model for those types of communities, especially in the Filipino community. I think it's really neat. But my mom said, when I was growing up in California, it was predominantly diverse. There were a lot of Hispanics, Asians, a lot of sorts of different people. So it wasn't really new to me when it was new to me when I went to Michigan and realized it wasn't similar like that. But obviously, there's a lot more people in California, so that is what it is. So, but now at the big stage, it is starting to get more diverse. You see the kids from different communities, especially in Texas, heavily diverse area, a lot of different people, and that's a great opportunity for me to be in this type of market and this type of community. And with the help of the Dallas Stars, we're really branching out in all sorts of places. So I'm very honored to be a big part of that.
The NHL draft has always been an inexact science. And when you look at you becoming a superstar in the NHL and, going in the second round in 2017 in the draft, I understand that it happens because it is an inexact science. But what do you remember feeling yourself about being drafted in the second round? Did you know in that moment that a lot of teams made a mistake, or was it more about, hey, I still got work to do here?
Yeah, well, the draft's the draft. I kind of, it was easy for me to think about it the second time because my brother kind of went in a similar situation when he was not picked in the first, then went early second or mid second, and similar situation. But I think back then you're just, I don't know. You're what was I, 17 at the time? You're kind of like, right. You don't know what's going to happen. Your agent, your family, especially your family, are the ones that were right next to me in the thick of it. But at the end of the day, teams needed what they needed. They have shopping lists, right? So obviously, I don't hold any grudges against that. And but I do remember after, because it was hard when you're kind of on the cusp of the first and the second, because they have two separate days.
2 different days, right?
So that was a little tough because you knew, okay, you were there the whole first day, and that you wait until you get to the very last, and you weren't. But I guess the good thing is you get excited for the second round, right? Because hopefully you get picked relatively early, which I did, and kind of reminds me when I was in junior when I got drafted to Kingston.
Fourth round.
I was the first pick in the fourth round, and the first 3 rounds were on a internet broadcast right? So they had people picking it they call it in, and then I forgot who announces it, but they announce it and say this guy goes to that team. So they did the first round, they did the second round, and they did the third round, and then the show ended, and I'm like, oh boy, this is gonna be a long day, and I eventually closed the computer and get a call from a guy from Kingston said I got drafted. So it's kind of a little similar situation, but that's all water on the bridge now, and I'm excited that I'm here in Dallas.
Does it make it a little bit easier that to their first 2 picks they grabbed Miro Heiskanen and Jake Ottinger in front of you? Like, what a draft! What a couple of rounds for the Dallas Stars, man.
Yeah, no, I remember when they got drafted. I didn't know who they were when they were drafted, but when I got picked from Dallas, and my head was spinning, and then I asked like who'd they pick ahead of me, and they said Miro and Jakey, so they got their goalie and D, and I thought, okay, cool. I'm their first 4 they picked, so that was pretty cool.
Right, come on, you were thinking, who are these guys? I'm going to bury these guys at camp. I'm going to show them. I'm like, little bit.
Yeah, well, then I met Jakey and about the camp and everything, and found out it was a BU guy. So
very good. So let's get to the here and now. Listen, you're having a fantastic season, sitting at 33 goals already. You're on that 50 goal pace. I noticed with your shots, you're shooting the puck on average 1 more per game than you were before. It's not like guys get on a heater goal scoring wise and you look at their shooting percentage and you're like, you're not shooting on a heater, but you are shooting the puck more. I just wonder about refining that skill and if that was a conscious effort to try and push your goals to the next level.
Yeah, well, I think more so this year than last year. I tried to I look at analytics. I think analytics for me is very important. I take a lot of pride in analytics. I know a lot of players don't like that. They don't really look at it. They just want to play. But I'm big on. Last year I had 150 shots blocked, right, and I had 100 missing net or something like that. So that was a conscious decision for me to not get my shots blocked and try to get shots through and not try to really force anything. But how
is that this year? How's that going this year?
Well, now
the blocks.
It's been it's hard because now I'm on. When you try to force shots and they get blocked, you kind of look at this sheet because we had the sheet afterwards, and Joe hands me the sheet, and I get 4 shots blocked and a little rattled, or 3 missed shots or net and everything. So, but with the more attempts, obviously it's going to happen. But I think this year I kind of keep that in mind, not to try to force things through 3 or 4 bodies, but. That could be one of the reasons why I had more shots on net. So I don't think the attempts are a little more this year, but I think getting him through and not missing the net is something that helps get that number up too.
And just one more on that. Sorry, Pierre, but you're 58% Corsi for this year. You're plus 26. I don't know if plus minus matters to you or not, but when you say you pay attention to analytics, is there another layer beyond just shot attempts and blocks that you actually pay attention to and value? Are you a expected goals guy, Corsi? What else for you?
Not really, because I know that's a lot of different variables going to that stuff. It is a team game at the end of the day. So your Corsi could be bad because we're all just not playing really well. And, we're just getting dominated by one team, so it's hard to keep track. I think ozone possession time is an important stat. Really, kind of that is one that I look at because that's kind of individual. How long you can hold on the puck or how many puck touches you get. But more so the team stuff. I look at all the team stuff before the games, and it's not a lot you can control as an individual out there. You're playing with 4. Elite players. So, but that's something I like to try to keep in mind.
You talked about the team aspect. You've been on the same line more or less for a couple of years now, which is unheard of in today's NHL. It used to be more commonplace back in the day, but playing with Joe and Rupi, when everyone's healthy, you guys are pretty much always together. And, for you guys to stay together, that's got to be pretty consistent. That's what you guys have been. But what do you think you all bring to each other to make it work so consistently?
Yeah, well, like you said, it's my 3rd year. I think I played in the same line with them consistently, like you said, when we were healthy for pretty much 2.5 years, I think, so far. So, after that, you kind of start to realize what you can do and what you can't do. You kind of know where guys are going to be I mean, how long guys are going to stay on the ice, when they're going to change, when they're going to go forecheck or whatnot. So it's you kind of build that instinct where guys are going to do, and that's obviously a significant advantage if you have that type of chemistry, as people say. And but I mean, just with Rupe, his speed and everything, and Joe's the way he can break pucks out is pretty important and makes slippery plays and get us the puck so we can get up the ice and get humming. So it's been working so far these couple of years. I know it's actually, I think it's the anniversary of my first game today, 3 years ago, Joe.
Oh, wow.
Bet you didn't know that.
I did not know that.
No, I know. I'm just looking at I just got a memory on my phone.
That's funny you know that. What's the memory on the phone?
Oh, well, it's like on my way to Toronto to play my first game.
Right.
So, yeah,
cool.
So I think today.
213.
His first game?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
1 assist.
1 assist, yeah. First game. 3 years ago.
There you go. Time flies.
And a pandemic in between.
Yeah.
It's the second time now that you've mentioned to me. When you were here in October, I was writing a story on Joe Pavelski, and I asked you to talk about. And of all the things, I thought you were going to talk about his game because we know what a redirect master he is and everything he does in the offensive zone. The first thing you mentioned to me was his ability to chip the puck off boards to get out of the defensive zone in transition. That would have never been the first thing that popped to mind for me, but you mentioned it again. And so is it just one of those little elements that makes your line go, essentially? Yeah,
well, I mean, like you said, we played 2.5 years of my career. So you pick up on everything. I mean, you pick up literally everything. You know what they're going to do in the D zone. You know what they're going to do in the neutral zone. What they can and can't do, right? So I think it's a significant part of the game. It's very often overlooked. Breaking the puck out, not having the poise to be able to make that next pass up the ice is something that obviously Joe, with his experience and his skill, has developed over his career. So I think that's definitely overlooked. You don't see that analytically. Maybe you do see it analytically, but not the point sheet or the basic stats. So, but as a player who is always on the ice, and you see that, you see all the little parts of hockey games where those pretty much win or lose games, because that's one of the most difficult things to do, to break the puck out clean.
Last one from me, and then we'll get you out of here. With you and playoff experience, you've had one go through, but I think about the bubble with you and the fact you were in the bubble and you were there and sort of bore witness to it all, and maybe what that was like for you to be so close but not engaged. And now you've got this opportunity with a heck of a good team this year that could really do some damage. Just maybe how that bubble experience motivates you when you get another crack at trying to get there.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say the bubble really. Last year for sure, that was when I had my first experience, and obviously the bubble is significant. They went all the way to the final, but obviously no fans, and I was just basically a little kid watching all these superstars play on the ice. I didn't play a game. I didn't play a shift. So
is that how you felt?
I didn't play a shift. I took
a
couple. I practiced every day. Went to all the meetings. I took warm-ups twice. But I think nowadays, when you're engaged and you're a big part, a huge part of your team, it's something that last year when we made it to 7 in Calgary, that was something where you're like, this is what you worked hard all season long, but you never realize how hard it is to get back to the playoffs, and to be able to do it, to have a chance to do it again this year on this team. It's hungry and gets me all excited, because it is hard to get to the playoffs and especially win a series. And we got close last year, and it only motivates me to do more, because now I kind of have an idea what to expect, how loud it can get, and how awesome it is to play at the American Airlines Center in May. So it's pretty neat.
Fantastic stuff. Hey, what do you make of LeBrun's Cowboys hat there? Are you a Cowboys fan living there, or what?
Yeah, so a lot of people, I don't know why, but a lot of players seem to bag on me because I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan now.
Good for you.
So, I figure you live there. you kind of have that mutual respect for them. So, I would say definitely a Cowboys fan. I was unfortunately devastated when they lost to San Francisco, but
you get used to
hopefully they'll be back next year. And they got a good team.
Right on.
They do
Listen,
have
Jason.
a good team. Yep.
Yeah. Sure, guys. Yeah, I'm sure everything's going to be just fine. Jason, thanks so much. Really appreciate you taking the time. Best of luck the rest of this year, and we'll check in again.
Perfect. All right, guys.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap up the podcast. Thanks again to the Dallas Stars and Jason Robertson for joining Pierre and I. Big thanks to our sponsors as well, Cross Country Canada, Supplies and Rentals, and of course our good friends over at Liberty Smart Security. We'll keep an eye on all things trade related. If there are updates, we will do our best to bring them to you. Otherwise, have a fantastic rest of your day, rest of your week, and look forward to chatting again soon here on Got Your Back, LeBrun and Rishaug. Cheers, folks.